Well, good evening, folks. Hope you're well. Relatively brief video today because I've got a stack of work to do. Um, Giving you due notice. Probably, if I can find time, I'll do a video tomorrow. Ho, ho, ho. But that'll be the end of the matter until Friday because I am in Denmark for most of the week. So if you're looking for videos of moi, all six of you, trust me, they're not going to be there until I'm back. Depends how I feel on Friday getting back as well. So there we are. This video is rather strange when I look back. I watched a quite amazing video on YouTube, I think it is, about Sir Frank Whittle. Now, anybody who doesn't know Frank Whittle would have benefited from his efforts in the past because he is the chap, an Englishman if ever there was, a beautiful man, an engineer who joined the Royal Air Force and in his time he was an aeroplane fanatic, and in his time in the Royal Air Force he looked as an engineer of an alternative way to power aircraft. He invented the jet engine, quite frankly. And when you watch this program about Sir Frank Whittle and his research and development and efforts to try and get the thing patented, you rapidly realize that the system was geared towards or against him. It was rigged against him from day one. It was unfortunate timing for him at the development of his idea of jet engines. It's a pity, quite frankly, that he invented it so soon. Had he waited till after the Second World War had finished, and there's no doubt we would have still won the Second World War despite whether the jet engine existed or not. A close call, I might add, but there we are. Had he waited until the Second World War had finished before exploring and developing his jet engine, he would have been a far more wealthy person. But in effect, I mean, he was commissioned as an officer in the Royal Air Force and went to serve his engineering apprenticeship in Cranwell, and then went to the Air Force to talk about developing and his research on the jet engine. And at the time, during the war, it was shelved and poo-pooed by many that said it wouldn't work, etc. It's flawed, there's a flaw in the calculations. And how very dare they? And yet he was stifled from pillar to post. And what effectively I'm trying to say is that he was ripped off. Because somewhere in the line, somebody knew that he's got a winner here. And the Air Ministry and the Patent Office leaked this information. And under the Official Secrets Act, of course, he couldn't get a bloody patent sorted out. And yet the idea had been out there, and the Germans got their hand on this idea because it was, an open door policy. It was soon hit the rest of the world that Whittle had developed and designed this jet engine prototype. The idea had gone. He'd open his mouth, come out of his mouth, and it had flown away, and it was out there in the ether, if I can mention the word. Out there in the universe. The Germans picked it up and run with it like crazy because they thought it was fantastic from the start. And Heinkel, for example, developed this jet engine. So the race was on in the war. Eventually Whittle did get the idea approved to develop, but it was in the latter stages of the war. Sadly, had he been taken seriously just before the war started and developed, we could have had the Gloucester Whittle and Meteor before the Germans had jet engines, and it would have probably shortened the war by 3 years at least. Think about that. Whittle had the potential, his invention, to shorten the war by 3 years. Had the bastards listened to him in the first place, these bloody scribbling Pharisee administrators. But the worst thing that they did to Whittle, of course, was because he was in the Air Force, everything he did and invented belonged to the military. That's the problem when you join the military. They own you, and they own everything that comes out of your brain as well. Yet having a first engineer, a 1-1 engineering degree from Cambridge, he struggled to get funding, and poor sod was ripped off. Oh yes, what did they do? They give him a couple of gongs, medals, the recognition. But there's no money when getting medals and things like that. It's just a case of, don't give him a pay rise, give him a title. Well, oh yes, he got a knighthood eventually when he was about to croak it. But the poor sod, he had 2 kids, I think, and a wife, and he died deeply disappointed, and he was cremated ultimately with his wife, separate boxes, and their remains their ashes are actually interred at RAF Cranwell in the Chapel of Rest, and you can go and see them. Sir Frank Whittle and his wife next door to him. They both died within a year of each other. It's quite a sad story, but he did have a good life. But he had 3 or 4 nervous breakdowns with the stresses of it all. But his idea saved the world. Now we got every person on this planet who's been and had use of an aeroplane and been on holiday, for example, or flown in a jet, has got him to thank for that very idea. So it's an interesting video to watch. Sir Frank Whittle, it's called. It's on YouTube. And this idea came to him straight out the blue, out, just whoosh, like that. He wasn't really thinking of anything particularly. He was just interested in aeroplanes and engines. And sometimes some of the inventions that we take for granted happen like this. They just come to us, out of the blue. It's always been a fascination for me what gave you the idea? Well, I don't know, it just popped into my head. It's quite amazing. I'm still continually baffled by it. I'm waiting for my ideas, quite frankly. I keep asking. Well, one of the things I figured out very quickly after leaving school and getting a JOB and joining the Air Force myself was that I'd never really handled money much. Suddenly, I had more money than I knew. I had more money than I'd ever been used to, quite frankly. What do I do with this stuff? And I just bunged it in a bank. I saved and saved and saved, and I had menial wishes. I didn't have great expectations. I was young, free and single, and I didn't really have a design to buy anything flash or posh or expensive. It accumulated quite well. I thought, well, this is easy. I do a job I enjoy doing. I'm in an environment which I'm used to because I was an Air Force brat. I was born into it, if you like, and I was the goldfish back in the goldfish bowl. Because I'd been out the Air Force in the Air Force as a child. My father left the Air Force, and then I wanted back into the bowl, and I got in myself into the Air Force, and I loved every second of it, quite frankly. And in hindsight, with what I know now, I wish I'd stayed in a little bit longer, but I did leave at the right time for my particular career path. But it is still a wonderful institution as far as I'm concerned. I do think that every millennial should do some form of military service for at least 5 years in their life, just so they can appreciate what patriotism means. And I believe in conscription. They're going to want 5 years of your life, and they're going to teach you a trade and responsibility, and they're going to teach you the importance of the culture, the borders, the language and the culture, and being a patriot. That's what it's all about. But there's none of that now, not with the millennials. Everybody's welcome. Oh, for sure. Quite a sad state of affairs. But I'm for national service, personally. It will certainly square up the problem in this country if every one male and female who are eligible will be sucked into the system and regurgitated after 5 years, having gone through the brainwashing of discipline, which we need. And we do need discipline in our lives. But the one thing was missing in my education was that you do the usual guff, don't you? You do the compulsory geography. Well, everything's compulsory initially, up to the age of 13, because at 13 they think you're intelligent enough to decide what area of study you want to get rid of and a waste of time, and what you want to concentrate on for your exams. And some people went down the history route, some people went down the languages route, and some people go down the science route. Well, I went down the science route. And I ended up doing maths, English, chemistry, physics and biology. But there was a couple of obligatories you simply couldn't wiggle out of. And one of those was religious education. Couldn't drop it as a subject. It was part of the brainwashing system. And the other one you couldn't drop was mathematics. Well, that's fine. Okay, so yes, do calculus, you can do trigonometry, you can do all the algebras and the other bullshit coming out the ears. It becomes tedious. And once you've learned the basic theories and the equations, everything else is easy. And I left school totally ill-prepared for running my life, quite frankly. You think you know everything. You don't. And I started my career and I started to get paid. I thought, well, this is bloody marvellous. I'm doing something I love. I'm in an environment I love. And I'm getting paid for it. And if I'm poorly, they look after me. If I need dental care or health care, they look after me. I've got the sports facilities coming out of the union. I can continue my further education if I want to. There's education centres. It's all free, laid out there for you. What more can you want? It's still the same today. Both of my children, adult children, now benefit from this as well. But there was still something lacking. I couldn't handle money. That's as simple as that. And I reached the point in my life where I thought about buying a house. And I knew next to nothing about mortgages. I had no idea how they worked. Everybody I knew got a house, has got a mortgage. Very few cash buyers. If only. I knew next to nothing about motor insurance and cars and third-party theft. This is all stuff I had to learn. But in the meantime, nobody taught me how to handle money. Nobody. Nobody taught me about banking and what banks were. All I knew is if I wanted a posh car, I either paid for it cash or I got it on tick. And then I had to figure out who do I go to for a loan, and what's the differences between compound interest? What's compound interest? Or APR? What's all these phrases, and how does money really work? And a majority of people, even today, in our regular lives, if you like, still don't understand the con, and it is a con, that's been perpetrated all of us, since we were born. And that is, we have to wake up one morning and suddenly realise it's rather strange. The majority of people, despite working for the most productive parts of their lives, a huge chunk, go to their grave with their songs still in them. Number one. They're worked to death, fundamentally. And what have they got to show for it? Well, in the grand scale of things, when you consider that, let's just say, from the age of 19, you earned, let's say, arbitrarily, £25,000 a year. That's arbitrary. Some people earn a lot more. Multiply that by the number of years worked, and then you can look at the gross income of that person throughout their life. And I'm being very conservative. We've all been through, by the time we die, probably £1,000. That's £1 million. We've all earned £1 million, probably, by the time we're in the holy goes, dead. We're all millionaires. Yet most people go to their graves cash poor and asset poor. And when you sit down, you think, well, they don't teach you at school one of the most important aspects of living when you're at school, when you can absorb this stuff quite easily. But they don't teach you money management and the banking system and the life insurance system and the pension system. They will not teach you this. We're expected to self-educate, and many of us don't bother. We learn by bitter experience and loss and frustration and regret. By the time you wake up and smell the coffee, it's too late. They've got you, my friend. They've got you. There is no syllabus in children's education about money management and the banking system and how banks are ripping people off left, right and centre by this thing called usury, and who started the usury and what is the history of money. You see, that could be the topic. Where did this thing money come from? Well, I've recently done a video about the origin of money, and it's all about control. Money controls our lives from start to finish, but they don't really want to make it obvious. And they certainly don't want to educate you how to use money because it's not... You see, in certain schools, they do teach you money management as a priority. They teach the students. But this isn't open to the usual plebs. And I think it's a disgrace that they don't teach children money management at school. Children who are leaving school, I say children loosely, let's say 18 years old, they have no concept of what compound interest is. They don't understand the dangers of credit and credit cards. They don't understand mortgages, straight repayment mortgage or endowment policies on insurances, and nothing. And so we end up going to the high street to speak to some morons, and they will explain, or to the best of their ability, and we've got a choice of two, really, that or that. And when you try to probe into them, what's the benefits of each one of them, even the purveyors of such things aren't really clued up on money management because they too hadn't been to school and been taught money management. It's the blind leading the blind. There is no doubt in my mind that cash is king, and when you pay cash you can get a lot better deal, more bang for your buck than anybody who's getting anything on tick. We all know that. It's common sense, but it's not that common. Cash will always be king. Always. It is not a case that the meek will inherit the earth, folks. The rich will own the earth, and they do. And it is never designed that we are born to be successful. We are slaves, Neo. That's what we are. We truly are. We are slaves. Slaves to the system. We are, as they say on the Matrix, we are simply batteries providing energy and work. Well, they get the work out of us using our energy. Energy. That's on the So there is no incentive for schools to teach children money management. Because first of all, they would argue that children can't relate to salaries. They can't relate between job and career. Weekly pay, monthly pay. I know very few people that get paid weekly. Because it used to be that way. My weekly wage packet in an envelope. Here, Betty, just leave us a couple of bob so I can have a pint and I'm happy. Those days are gone. They don't even want to give you the cash now. It's all electronic, isn't it? It's all become rather, well, what you don't see, you don't miss. Well, I don't see it. It's an electronic bank transfer. And I won't see it unless I go to the cash point, stick a plastic card in, press a button, and it says credit or debit or how much I've got in my bank or not, as the case may be. We've lost the tactility of it all. We've lost the smell of the money, the feel of the money, the security of the money to know it's in your pocket. But it's not, is it? It's a plastic bloody card. Because they don't want us to hold this stuff or hold gold coins. They took that off us under Glass-Steagall, didn't they? Glass-Steagall, yes. The gold left the system. It's funny how the silver's left the system as well now. More and more. What we perceive as silver coins are not. They're nickel. And it's plated. And they look awful. I think it was 1956 they stopped putting, it could be about 1956, they stopped putting silver in sixpences. There we are, I think. Maybe wrong. But it's funny, isn't it, how we are now becoming a cashless society. And it's ever easier now for us to wake up in the morning, check online or go to the cash point, see what sort of money you got in there, and suddenly it'll say, computer says no. What are you going to do? We should never be in a position where we don't have cash in our hand as an alternative. And this is why they're trying to get people microchipped. We've already experienced this. The big push, and the tap now we could in the UK. I think it's up to £30. I can find someone's debit or credit card on the floor, go into any shop, and go as long as it's under 30 quid, I'll buy an item, and £30 and under, I'll go tap, and the assistant will say thank you, bye. And I can go to another shop and I can tap another 30 quid and another 30 quid and another 30 quid with somebody else's card. And it's bloody dangerous. Oh, it's not working. Oh well, never mind. And walk off out the shop. Because this tap and go now, it's made us lazy. And the whole idea is, folks, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze, is to divorce us from our money even more. And they'll be reminiscing in 100 years' time. Do you remember those things we used to have? What are they called? Tip of my tongue. Coins. That's right. Oh yeah, I remember bloody heavy things, weren't they? Pain in the ass, always losing them, and I can't keep track on them. In one jacket pocket, pair of trousers in my bloody drawers. But I don't have that now. It's all on my card, you see. We think we're so clever. And that's just another stepping stone, isn't it? Now it's all on the card. It'll be all on the chip soon. But the problem is, folks, is if you go to a shop and your card says no, you can always go and find the alternate in cash and say, I'll pay cash. There you go, give me my loaf of bread. But if they get rid of cash, and you're stuck with your card, And the computer said, no, you and your family ain't eating. How many people do you know have got mortgages? I know loads. I've been a victim of them, 2 of them. But what you've got to realise is this. A mortgage, you pay 3 times the amount for your house. 3 times you pay for your house up to a standard 25-year mortgage. 3 times. You could have bought that house 3 times over. If you calculate the interest, the compound interest, yet again, what's this word compound? Well, compound interest. They didn't teach you this at school, did they? No. I'd just go for the mortgage. You want a mortgage, you want to buy your own house, don't we, Terry? Yeah. They get the compound interest and they end up spending 3 times the amount of money over 25 years for a piece of shit. Cash will always be king. If you bought it cash, you'd have paid 25 grand. Now that you've got a mortgage, you're going to pay 90,000 pounds, 70 to 80,000 pounds for it. You paid 3 times for the bloody house, by which time you'll probably drop dead, or your children will inherit it. But here's the deal: how many people get a mortgage, straight repayment mortgage? Okay, 25 years straight repayment mortgage. They're your monthly payments. Okay. But they both work. What about this though? What if they get a mortgage payment of £600 a month? I should dream. And they, instead of paying £600, pay £1,200 a month. Do they not realise that they would pay their house off in about 6 years instead of 25? You see how much we've been stuffed? People are astounded. They can't believe it. They go and calculate it. I can't believe it. Yeah, that's true. If you double your mortgage payments, you'll pay a house off in about 6 years. No way. Yes way. They tell you this? No, they don't. What we are encouraged to do, of course, is maximise our borrowing. Borrow as much as you can possibly afford. No. Don't. Buy a house you can comfortably afford and double your mortgage payment. And you'll pay your house off in 6 years. Oh yeah, baby. How many people understand compound interest? Very few. And this is what we're not taught in our schools. They don't want to teach us how to be successful money managers in our lives, folks. They want us as slaves, up to our neck in debt, the wage slave and the debt slaves. And if there's one thing I would say to parents out there in closing, if you've got children, you make sure what they're not taught at school, you teach them at home about avoiding overdrafts and the Mr. McCorber story. Pound in, pound out, result happiness. Pound in, pound and a penny out, result utter misery. It's all very simple. And remember, double your mortgage payments if you can, if it's a straight repayment mortgage. And you'll own your house in 6 years. Go and do the maths. Speak to you later on in the week. Have a lovely time. Be safe. Love you all. Take care.